I don't think Bekkem Kritza is getting enough credit as Penn State's quarterback prospect in the class of 2025.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
At the end of the day, if Penn State only gets one quarterback prospect in the class of 2025, Bekkem Kritza is a pretty good one. This is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm your host, Seyko, and thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Brian Smith is back, the recruiting expert for the Locked On Podcast Network, also covers Miami of Florida, Auburn, and we're getting a holistic recruiting perspective on today's show. And since this is a recruiting episode, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Brian, I am here to defend Bekkem Kritza because I feel like a majority of the Penn State fan base isn't sold that he can be a legitimate prospect. There are questions about, okay, his development. Is he a project versus someone that can play right away? And I do think there is a development aspect to him. But after listening to him for 10 minutes via 24/7 Sports, I am sold on how he carries himself, his character, his demeanor. He explained the transfer from Colorado back to from Miami Central back to Colorado, back to Miami Central. So I think part of all the ratings, the lower ratings, have to do with the transfer ineligibility because he went back home to Colorado to be with family. So at the end of the day, you take that transfer equation out of the question, I think he'd be a much higher rated prospect.
He didn't get a chance to be seen last year, and Colorado is just not a state with a lot of scouts. So that's part of it. He didn't exactly get a chance to showcase in front of a lot of people in general right before that either in the summer when he's moving back. But now he's played this spring on a prominent 7-on-7 team. He's got a few rounds in. He went up to Elite 11, up Penn State. His ranking will go back up, but he's 6'6", 200 pounds, give or take.
Yes.
You know, he just doesn't look like a kid that's an early impact guy. He's probably not. He needs to eat, get bigger and stronger, but he's got an arm. Smart kid, good kid to be around. He's a nice guy. Penn State fans are just ready to win now. That's just, everything is now. So it's just not the right fit for him to have that conversation. But like this is the kind of guy Joe Pa took. Most of his kids didn't sniff the field their first 2 years. It didn't matter the position, really. Yeah. So it's an old school Penn State recruit, the kid that has all the talent, just needs to add physical maturity.
I think this is very similar to the way that Ethan Grunkmeyer was recruited. Kind of flew under the radar, didn't have a recruiting profile until later in the cycle, and then blossomed and became ultimately a consensus top 10 quarterback in the country. I don't know about that for Bekkem Kritza unless he absolutely wows at Miami Central his senior season, but for him to be a lower 3-star and be deemed again as a project, he has to sit and wait to gain weight. Really, that's the only issue because he moves very well for someone that's 6'5". He's addressed that, he said, and he's already put on the weight. He's gone up significantly. He's, like you said, give or take 200 pounds. His goal is to be 205, 210 after he's finished with high school. He intends to enroll early at Penn State and continue to put on weight. And it seems like he could project at 6'5", 6'6", and 225, 230 pounds maybe. And that is an ideal size for a quarterback. And he'll do that in an off season.
Yeah, 20 pounds in today's college football weightlifting world is 2 to 3 months. That's just the reality of it. Now, it may not come quite as quickly to him as some other guys, but I don't think he's ever dedicated himself to a weight room. So the only thing that might be more important to him is the playbook, which, you know, he's quarterback, but that weight room is competitive, especially for a guy that needs to pack on the pounds so he can take the pounding of being a quarterback. He'll be fine. Just give him some time.
So he can throw the ball. He moves very well. Is he a speedster? Absolutely not. But I think for someone that does project ultimately at 225, most likely, maybe 230 pounds, give or take, for someone who's 6'6" and 230 and can move eloquently, right? Like he's not going to look clunky or anything. He can tuck the football and run, and you could use him in maybe some quarterback option design plays. I think that is a major win for Penn State. What's also a major win is just how he carries himself as a human being. He seems very confident. I like the way that he was able to connect with a player like Lyric Samuel, who was at camp, other Penn State prospects that are recruited. He's just very active. The best players in the class aren't always, yes, of course, the most talented ones are truly the best. But I'm talking about the players that go above and beyond to recruit fellow high school prospects, the ones that go out of their way to be an extension of what the coaching staff, the recruiting staff is trying to do. And that's the immediate vibe that I got from Kritza with the way that he talked, answered questions about, yeah, we're trying to build this class. And he said he has no problem with the second quarterback. He's already, he's excited for the competition regardless. That's just somebody that Penn State wants, regardless of the recruiting ratings, the stars, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they did their own evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most important thing. If there's any spot you really need to make sure you do it your way to fit your scheme, the signal caller position would be it. So I'm not on this train that he's not the guy or whatever, because not everybody's going to be a high 4-star, 5-star quarterback recruit.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. Talent is there. Just give him some time.
Yeah, I like Kritza. He redshirts, and maybe not the redshirt freshman year, but his redshirt sophomore year could end up being someone that factors into the starting quarterback competition. Now, let's move on to the class of 2026, because I talked about it on a previous episode that because of the way Penn State's recruited quarterback in the 2025 cycle, they themselves have created a dilemma. So now you have to almost look towards 2026 because you missed on Matt Zollers. You've, in a sense, alienated Malik Washington, and you've taken the commitment from Kritza. So now you're going to move on to 2026. Probably a consensus top 5 quarterback in the entire class, maybe even top 3 when the rankings are finalized. Dia Bell, son of former NBA basketball player Raja Bell, is a legitimate candidate, even though he is from the state of Florida, to land at Penn State. We've already mentioned this, Brian, but based on the way he performed at the Elite 11 in State College, it started the discussions, the conversations about Dia Bell as a prospect are continuing to escalate here. And it's going to be a difficult one, but you and I still agree that Dia Bell has a legitimate shot at landing at Penn State.
Yeah, I know him and his dad, and great people. They're looking at this from a very broad perspective. Penn State, Texas, and a whole bunch of schools are after him. He could go about anywhere. Dia is very well traveled. His dad's had the money to take him places, and he's well versed. Leaving home won't matter much to him. He's not your typical South Florida kid. Miami is after him, but he's not rushing his decision. He's just trying to narrow it now. And Penn State is definitely on the shorter of lists.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger competitors is going to be Texas. I think that is definitely, especially with the recruiting run they had with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, Dia Bell to kind of add to that list. And again, there's just these question marks around quarterback. Drew Aller's season in 2024 is going to be a strong make or break for the trajectory of how Penn State is going to be able to land quarterbacks. Because what's the point of being a 5-star quarterback if you're going to end up being a game manager in a run-heavy offense?
Yeah, this is an important year. Regardless of what they do in recruiting right now, if the season doesn't go well in the passing game in particular, it will hinder Penn State at spots that they can't have that happen, quarterback and receiver. It's as straightforward as it gets. Everybody knows it. There's no reason to really harp on it, but they need to make it look fun to play in that offense and put up points.
Well, while we're on the topic, while we're speaking about it, run-heavy offenses, Penn State's had a very good track record as of late with running backs, and it makes sense. Running backs want to go to a run-proficient offense. Quarterbacks want to go to a pass-heavy offense. Well, one of those running back commits, Alvin Henderson, rumor has it he's going to flip to Auburn at some point. We've discussed this before. We're going to discuss it again on the other side of this break. And since this is a recruiting episode, let's talk about the leaders in job recruiting, LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. Well, you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn understands that small businesses are wearing tons of hats and might not necessarily have the time to devote to hiring. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier, quicker, and more intuitive. And that is why 2.5 million, yes, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So be one of them. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. It is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets. That is right, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. NBA in the conference finals, NHL in the conference finals. All you got to do is visit fanduel.com/locked on, and you can make every playoff shot count. And you can look at those lines that are right now up and active on FanDuel. If you like the Minnesota Timberwolves to take game 2, they are currently 4-point favorites. If you like the Rangers or the Panthers over on the NHL side of things, that money line is pretty even despite New York being the home team in game 2. If you like those lines, you can bet them right now over at FanDuel. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Alvin Henderson, out of the state of Alabama, became the third verbal running back commit to a class of 2025 for Penn State. And now there's a flight risk. Or I guess it was always there, Brian, because we've talked about it before. Even with the commitment, it felt a little strange. That's great. You know, Alvin Henderson's a top 10 running back in the entire country for 2025. But it seemed like at the end of the day, it was going to come down to Auburn or Miami of Florida. And then out of nowhere, J1 Sider and Penn State land his commitment. Now he still has an official visit lined up in June to come back to Happy Valley. And then for the time being, but I see On3's recruiting channel is saying, hey, Alvin Henderson's getting ready to flip. And then Locked On Auburn saying the exact same thing, that this was the plan all along, that there was a rumored plan that he was going to verbally commit to Penn State and flip to Auburn, that this was always a part of the blueprint. Brian, what do you know? Because you're very well connected now that you are following Auburn extensively. What are you hearing? Obviously, since he's 5 to 10 minutes away from campus, he can be there at any point. Hugh Freeze can meet with him at any point in time, and Penn State is just too far away to contend with the kind of recruiting prowess that Auburn just has, simply because he's a local player.
It's about an hour and a half, but it seems like it's 5 minutes because every time I'd go to an Auburn spring practice, there was Alvin. It was like he was part of my scouting team figuring out what was going on. But everybody's always thought he was going to go to Auburn. He's a kid that has always liked him. He gets along with Freeze and the staff very well, and he shows up. He doesn't have to do that, but he shows up all the time. So I've always said I thought he would end at Auburn, but I didn't know who he would commit to first. I still hold to that, but Penn State and Sider are really good at recruiting. So
yes,
somebody's going to leave out of the 3 for Penn State.
Yes.
I have no idea which one it'll be.
Yeah.
But the easiest pick is him because they just don't get kids from Alabama. Hardly anybody gets kids from Alabama. So we'll see. But Alvin Henderson, the rumor is he'll end up at Auburn at some point. Timeline, don't ask. I have no idea with that kid.
Okay.
We've had a million different rumors about him committing, and then he popped for Penn State. You know, we didn't see the Penn State thing coming, so I'm not going to give you any dates either. He's a guy you'll have to watch all the way through till signing day.
Brian, I have to ask it because let's call it what it is here. Alvin Henderson was always, even before the conversations leading up to it, when I was talking to other Penn State insiders that said that, hey, Penn State's going to be on commitment watch here for Alvin Henderson. before it started to go through the national recruiting atmosphere. And the conversation was always, but he won't stay committed. But what is the point of this? And that's my question. What was the point of taking his commitment if this was before, during, and after? Every conversation is Alvin Henderson most likely won't stay committed to the Nittany Lions. Why even take the commitment?
It's my question as well. Penn State, like any other school, has coaches that believe in themselves, and they should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But 3 guys in a class at running back is a lot. So maybe they thought somebody was going to decommit. I'm just throwing mud at a wall here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they got some local guys basically for them. It's kind of odd that they went really hard after an Alabama kid after having 2 commitments. You got me. I don't know what that is. That's very odd to me.
And I know that Auburn's recruiting another top running back, in SEC country and everything, and Georgia's backed off of him. So there is the chance that maybe Alvin Henderson looks at that too and says, okay, I might as well stay at Penn State. And then there is now Keandre Barker, somebody that could ultimately flip away from Penn State. He is one of those. Tyke Hayes seems to be the lock to stay in the class, but then Keandre Barker and Alvin Henderson have been deemed as players that could eventually flip. Now, in respect to that, Jabri Wallace-Coleman was originally committed to Georgia. He is an in-state prospect for Penn State, and he has an official visit lined up. Brian, I think it's very interesting that when you have 3 verbal running back commits, you're still courting other running back prospects at the end of the day, and then they're linked to Bo Jackson out of Ohio as well. So Penn State even knows that they might be confident in themselves to retain all 3, but at the end of the day, I think they understand that there's a significant possibility that we're going to have to pivot. We might not even end up with 3, and it might be the likes of Tyke Hayes and Jabri Wallace-Coleman, which I am all for, actually. I don't want to see them lose the commitment of Alvin Henderson or Keandre Barker. I think Barker has a lot of potential. I like what I've seen out of Henderson. But at the end of the day, I am very comfortable with the fact, and I'd be even just as confident if Penn State ends up securing 2 running backs in this class, and it's Tyke Hayes and Jabri Wallace-Coleman, and they'd be more inclined to stay home since they are in-state prospects.
Yeah, if it's close, I always want the kid that's from a program
Right.
that's within a 3-hour radius. This is not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State made a living forever out of kids, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New
Yeah.
Jersey, Maryland, Virginia. Occasionally get a kid from North Carolina or something, but those were their states, and they were a top 10 program. It's not broke, don't fix it.
And it's not like there's a significant drop-off either. Jabri Wallace-Coleman is definitely comparable to the likes of either out. It depends on where you look, right? Depending on what ranking service you use. And Rivals, On3, 24/7, they're all very. ESPN's kind of the outlier. I don't really like to throw ESPN out there too often, but the big 3 usually are very accurate. Okay. It's just a matter of seeing the prospects themselves. And one service is going to see one potentially more depending on what camp or what games they're able to attend. I like Jabri Wallace-Coleman a lot. I like Henderson. I like Barker a lot too. Barker also kind of had same thing with Kritza, had to deal with the transfer ineligibility as well from moving. He's an Arkansas native. He transferred to Texas. Now he's down in Florida, right? So Barker's kind of dealt with that too. And that's why his rating's going to be limited in the sense because scouts are not seeing him. But I hope that I think Henderson is going to decommit. I'm with you there. Hopefully they can replace him with Jabri Wallace-Coleman and then somehow retain Keandre Barker. I think that's the way this is going to work itself out.
If it did, it'd be good for Penn State. They'd be in plenty of good running backs in the room. So they could still have a run-heavy offense with guys that are truly good at not just running it. Like these guys can all catch and everything. These are all-around running backs. Penn State's recruiting the position as well as any school in the country, honestly.
And with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen both expected to move on after the 2024 season, there's definitely going to be a lot of time, a lot of plays to be, a lot of time on the football field to be had with an open competition. And I think that's very appealing to the returners, but also the class of 2025 running backs that could contend for time right away in their college careers. Brian, you've covered the state of Florida for a long time, even though now you're centered around Alabama, but you know these prospects that are in the state of Florida currently that Penn State is targeting. And what are their chances of landing any of these big name prospects out of the southern state? We'll discuss that on the other side of this break. Today's episode is also sponsored by Gametime. You're going to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Are you getting hyped for the NBA playoffs? Because it is conference finals time, in the thick of it to decide who moves on. But picture yourself at a live game with that playoff atmosphere. Well, Gametime can turn that dream into a reality as the NBA's official authorized ticket marketplace. And get this, prices drop on Gametime as it gets closer to tip-off. Anytime you browse the app, you're going to see those playoff matchups, and you can grab some pretty sweet deals. You get last-minute tickets, last-minute discounts, but probably the best feature is the panoramic views of the seats. So you're not second-guessing yourself. You know what your point of view is going to look like and what that angle is going to be before you get to the arena. Gametime's got it all, plus the lowest price guarantee. Last minute deals, as I've mentioned, flash deals on the app too. So are you ready to snag the playoff tickets? Download the Gametime app. Sign up, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Wide receiver is a priority. It always has been, and it always will be for the foreseeable future, just with the way that Penn State needs to get back on track. So with these Florida prospects, Brian, I want to discuss two of them primarily, and there's so many, but these are the ones, these are just a couple that have scheduled official visits in June, and ones that have been connected to Penn State originally, and now it's like, okay, this official visit could really turn the tide on the recruitment. Those two names are Nashawn Montgomery and Samari Reed. As far as preference goes, again, it depends on what recruiting service you look at. Brian, you can probably attest to this a little better, seeing them and being able to connect with them, talk to them about their recruitments. Montgomery and Reed, I don't want to say are exactly comparable, but if Penn State gets a solid 4-star wide receiver one way or another, if they land either, it would be nice to get both commitments, but if you landed one or the other, I don't know that there's exactly a preference there just because of how talented they are individually.
Samari's the bigger player. He's 190 pounds or so. Nashawn's probably a little twitchier, but they're both really good.
Overall talent, right?
Yeah, so it just depends on which specific receiver spot you want. The boundary guy would be Samari. Nashawn would be more likely to play to the field, but they can both score over the top. I've seen them both live multiple times. These are really good football players, and they can play pretty much any school in the country from a physical standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I'd honestly opt for the size at that point, if that's going to be the case. Do you have any indication where if Reed or Montgomery is one of them is more likely to commit to Penn State, and they both have official visits set up, or is it just kind of dead even right now?
Well, I mean, Penn State's got Samari on the 21st of June. At least that's what I've got. He's visited Ole Miss already. Mm-hmm. Nashawn, it sounds like Penn State or Florida. So the Florida thing is kind of weird because we don't know what's going to happen with their head coaching situation, but they've recruited Nashawn pretty hard. I think they could end up with both. It's very possible. They're doing a good job with both players. That's, of course, Sider's area down in the greater Fort Lauderdale, the Miami area. So would not be surprised if they got both of them.
All right. So that's good to hear for Penn State's side of things. How about it's a lot of these conversations in recruiting, Brian, have been centered around Penn State's offense because quarterback, wide receivers, running backs, offensive linemen, okay, by proxy, just because it's not an interesting position, is going to be left out of the conversation because of the star power, right? Okay, you can't light up the scoreboard as an offensive lineman. But defensively, it's been really quiet in the secondary. Yes, they have the 3 linebacker prospects, but defensive line, I know what they did in this past cycle for 2024, but it has been so quiet on the defensive line and in the secondary for Penn State in 2025. Randy Adarica is somebody that has a future cast to Penn State, has a really good relationship. It seems like Miami of Florida is leading the way there, but I also want to lump him in with Zaire Addison as well. I want to combine these two together here because they are coming up strategically on June 14th. And that is when Penn State is going to have a lot of other verbal commits at the same time. So what did we talk about with Bekkem Kritza about being a player recruiter, an extension of the coaching staff and the recruiting staff? Well, this is strategic to get players like this when they're going to be around other verbal commits. You could maybe get another commitment out of like that. So Zaire Addison is an offensive lineman. Randy Adarica probably projects more as a defensive tackle. At the moment, he's listed at 250, but those are both very good prospects, and they're in a situation where maybe Penn State could coax a commitment out of them.
Yeah, Adarica is closer to 280 now, and he's an interior player for sure. Penn State or Miami is the most likely. He got an offer recently from Southern Cal. Like he's still getting the offers. Really strong young man. Saw him play last year. Then I saw him again at Under Armour in Miami. He's a power player. That's what he is. And you can't win big time games without kids like this. He's going to end up playing college football, give or take 300 pounds. Got to have him, man. So he's an important recruit for them. Miami wants him to, and it's hard to beat them for Miami public school kids. I mean, he lives 20 minutes from University of Miami campus, maybe 30. So that's a challenge, but he really likes Penn State. And they've done a good job of recruiting him, and it's probably not that hard to sell when you talk about Penn State's defense last year.
Yeah.
As for Addison, I texted with him a little bit ago. Penn State, UCLA, and Georgia are his top three. That's a really random list for a Florida kid, so your guess is as good as mine, but his list has changed 20 times. Let's see what happens. He's going to make a decision in August.
Yeah, Addison is listed as a 4-star. He's listed currently at 6, and I'm going off of listings, right? So I'm glad you made the clarification for the defensive tackle.
Is 280 or so. Yeah, he's a big boy.
So that's how we know, that he's going to be a defensive. And you need that when you play against opponents like, I know Michigan's not this season, but you're merging the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. You still have to play a lot of traditional Big Ten teams that are going to be run first, ground and pound, big offensive line, and you need Adarica in the middle there, especially with the turnover that Penn State's going to have at defensive tackle after the season. Offensive line's always very important. We've seen the way that they develop them. Zaire Addison. I just think Penn State is being very strategic with including, and part of that might be timing as well, because they are coming from the state of Florida. So you have to, logistics are part of this, but I think it is very strategic that on the weekend with the most verbal commits, Penn State has prospects like Addison and Adarica on campus with all of them together. Yeah,
that's not a coincidence. It's style points too. I get it. They're trying to have some fun with it, but it's also one that should work. You're going to be there with a friend of yours that's your high school quarterback. Makes it a little easier, right? So that's smart on Penn State's part. And everybody does this. If there's more than one kid at a school, you want them to visit the same weekend if you can. Makes it a little easier on the familiarity front. Penn State's about as far away as a kid like Adarica might go, though. So this is really unique to me. I have no idea what to expect. He's an inner city Miami kid going to the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. Yeah. I mean, those are two different worlds. So your guess is good as mine, but Miami's like the safe bet. But no, he wants to take the visit. So let's see what happens.
It is worth keeping an eye on here. And that's why we have Brian Smith on this show, the Locked On recruiting expert here with the network. If you want to keep up with Brian to get a more national perspective and his other coverage with Miami of Florida, Auburn, and so many other schools, check out his work on X. He also hosts Locked On Florida State. You can check out that podcast as well, part of the network. Brian, thanks so much for the time, and can't wait to catch up in just about another week too, when we have more updates here in regards to recruiting now that it is official visit season.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good one.
And once again, thanks so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. If you enjoyed this conversation, leave a like on the episode, share it with friends and family, be a part of the discussion in the comments section about Penn State football recruiting. You think they're going to be able to retain some of these prospects and even get some of the ones down in Florida? And if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to stay up to date and be here for daily conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And of course, don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering each and every league. You can find Locked On Sports Today now available on YouTube and the free Fire TV channels app.